Okay, welcome to another quote-unquote episode of what I'm calling Code Crime. Now, this is not going to be like the Yandere Dev video entirely, because I should note before I go through any of this that I'm not trying to bully a coder in this case. I think that the people that did this were actual coders, at least in some sense, and even if they were hobbyists, I think that they had good intentions, and I don't think that they're bad people in most cases. So I want to point that out because I'm not trying to rip into these people, I'm trying to rip into the code. And also, I think that most of the code here is the result of someone getting the code or getting the source and going, okay, well, I can't fix any of this garbage, I'm just going to add on to it because I want to make the game better. And I totally respect that. I think that that's a respectable way to do things, even if it doesn't produce fantastic code. Now, some context if you aren't aware, Beyond is a game engine that was made in something like 2003, 2002. It's existed for a long time. It's what Space Station 13 is made on. And in this community, there are a lot of what we call rips. A rip is when someone makes an original game and then sells that game, or has that game stolen by someone else who doesn't necessarily code, and then that game is then kind of trashed, like this, for instance, because you have 80 different people adding onto the game that don't necessarily know how to code very well, didn't make the original game, so on and so forth. So you get a mess, basically. Now, the first thing I can probably point out here that you'll maybe have already noticed is a lot of the folder organization is very strange. So instead of naming these things by, say, code, icons, etc., and you'll notice that we do have some of those, it's just not really important when we have everything else here, instead we have names. So you have names like Cody, Savior, Zareth, etc. Instead of, like, organizational terms, we just have the person who made the code. And you can look in here, and some of the things are really extensive. Like, this one's kind of small, this one's a bit larger, and you have another icons file here, right? And you have random icons, 3 icons in here that don't necessarily go anywhere. And you can see the problem already, probably. You have other versions of the game just shoved in here. Like, I think that these are just text files, I think, or save files, I guess. Anyway, very weird, very strange. It's just here. And that's like the number one issue that a lot of people pointed out in the Yandere Dev video that I didn't mention. So I want to point that out too. It's not easy to expand to this when it's organized like this. That makes it incredibly hard. That's worse than any code crime you could ever commit. So anyway, moving on to actual code, though, because I'm sure that's what people really want to see. This is pretty bad. Now, I should note that this is just how Beyond looks. I don't think Beyond has an inherently very attractive design to it. The code itself is obviously not the best, but this in particular is a thing that happens a lot in code bases and Beyond games. And honestly, this is probably one of the best cases I've seen. But the thing is that you can attach variables to these objects. So for instance, if you were to make a new jutsu object, it would have all of these variables attached to it. The issue with this, ultimately, and the reason I say this is probably the best case I've seen, is people will just put every single variable ever in one file for it. So for instance, if we have a jutsu file here, or, you know, let's say that we make our own object, just for example's sake, and we put like mob. So this is, or like we'll put player, right? We could put something like, you know, name here, and this is in the jutsu file, so maybe we want like, I don't know, jutsu abilities or something. And this is just another variable, right? The issue I see a lot, and what I'm proud of, one of the few things I'm proud of in this code for not seeing, is the fact that they don't do this where they have like health in here too. And the issue with that is that then, well, if I'm looking for a player health, how the fuck am I supposed to expect it to be in jutsu.dm instead of like health.dm or combat.dm or something like that, or stats or something? That happens a lot. And because I'm not trying to roast these people, I did want to say to whoever of the 20 people that have worked on this code base just unofficially made this piece of the code, good job, because there are genuinely much worse cases of this, even if this isn't the best. And that's something I didn't really do in the Yandere Dev video. I never really complimented any piece of the code. I don't think there really was much to compliment, but anyway, moving on. Another thing that happens a lot here, because I could go on and on about syntax errors, but I don't think that that's what most people are curious about. What I want to talk about is the strange structure of things. So, for instance, one example of this is in the warpers section. So every Naruto game has warpers leading from one place to another. And a warper, if you aren't a Beyond player, is probably a strange term to you. Basically, you walk onto one warper and you're teleported to another. The way I do this in my game is you walk onto a single warper. Like, let's say you walk onto warper 1 and you want to go to warper 2. The mapper in my game can then set the address of 1 to 2 and the address of 2 to 1. And you do that in the map editor. That's probably the easiest way of doing that because you can on the fly change things like that, and it's very easy to see. Now, the way that they've done it here is very different, and I don't expect you to read this. What I expect you to read is down here. if we continue scrolling, you're going to start to notice a whole lot of warper definitions. Now, this is, I would personally believe, the worst possible way to do something like this, because instead of just clicking on a warper and saying, hey, this goes to 2, and then clicking on 2 and saying this goes to 1, you then have to find 2 on the map, which could be anywhere. It could be in darkness, it could be under something, whatever. You have to find it, and then once you found it, you have to figure out if it's pointing to anything. So you have to find, like, let's say you're looking at B1, you have to find B2 as well. And then if you find B2, well, actually you need to find A2, because this is a quad. This is a group of 4 warpers that lead to each other. And there are groups of, I think, like, up to 8 at some point. There are, I think, more than 2,000 lines, 3,000 lines. There are 3,000 lines of these definitions, which means that not only are you having to individually define all of these, you have no idea if any of them are used. So there's no recycling capability here. You have to go back through and manually organize 3,000 lines of these. And that's probably more like, 1,500 warpers, but still, by God, that's a lot of warpers to organize, So this is what I mean by syntax errors and not wanting to focus on them. I think that this is a great example of something that is technically syntactically correct in this language. However, in terms of design, it's an awful idea. And people commented a lot on the Yandere video about modularity and how that was the real crime there. And I 100% agree. It's just kind of hard to explain to people. So I wanted to include this because this is not modular. I mean, it might look that way, but in terms of the actual effort expended by someone who wants to make this, expand this, it's awful. It's genuinely a terrible idea to do something like this. Now, for the other stuff, I think that I just want to move on to funny things, which is what's at what's at the bottom of the screen right now. We can go through here and talk a little bit about the admin structure. Now, this man's name, Crazy, I know it's pronounced differently, but whatever. Crazy is one of the, I believe, the original creator of this game. I don't know for sure. I personally have never in my life talked to Crazy. I have never met him or done anything similar, and I would also like to mention that this is common practice in Beyond games because of the RIP thing and because of the fact that games can literally just be stolen out from under you, including the code base and all of the resources. It's actually really prevalent and not a terrible idea to have stuff like this, and we're going to look at a lot of examples of this. I just want to defend it because I don't think it's inherently the worst thing I've ever seen, even if it is very funny that it's here. So, for the record, this is just checking to see if the person who logged in, or rather, if if the person in the ban list is crazy. The reason this stuff exists is because if someone steals your game and then bans you so you can't do anything about it, they would have to change the code. And most people who rip games don't know how to code because they're ripping games instead of making them. So you probably get the idea here. It's very similar to like those spiked wheels or like flamethrower and car door things in Brazil. It's like the weirdest, like most ghetto creation, but I really enjoy it. It's funny to see, right? And if we continue looking through here, we can see like, for instance, it will only log things. In every single case, it'll only log things if your key isn't crazy. So crazy won't be added to admin logs in any situation. And it also, like, the thing that's weird about this, and the thing I think is design-wise very wrong, is he adds this manually, right? He adds this manually to every single case where admin logs are added. So you could easily do this in a function, but I think that the reason he hasn't is because he wants it to be as hard as possible to remove his influence from the game in case you rip it, right? So it's sort of deep-rooted, right? It's deeply rooted in the game that he can't be removed, and I believe he knows he could have made a function for this, but he chose not to so that it's harder for him to be, I guess dissected out of EOTS or whatever this is called. Era of the Shinobi, I think. But anyway, one of the other funny things here is these exist. And you might say at first, well, it makes sense that you would have a list, even if this is not grammatically correct or isn't spelled correctly. It would make sense to have a list of people you can't ban, right? These are probably admins or coders or something. Right, it just makes sense. The thing is that these are actually just bait. These are bait so that people who rip the game can easily look up and say, okay, well, we just removed this list, or we just removed Crazy from this list, and we're fine. But in actuality, there are like literally 300 cases, or probably not 300, more like 100 cases. I think it says at the bottom here. 134 cases of Crazy in this code, and that's all that we can see. There's probably more obfuscated things spread throughout. So I just think it's funny that these are here because I don't think that they're here to say, oh, well, this person isn't bannable. It's just a surface level bait to get people to think they're getting rid of Crazy when they actually aren't. Which, again, is very ghetto and very funny to me. It's something you don't experience in a lot of cases. But anyway, one of the funniest cases of this that I've ever seen with Crazy and all of the Naruto games and all of the Beyond games everything altogether. This is hilarious to me. Is this function right here. So this age construct function. And you might say, well, why is this so funny, Rumi? I don't get it, right? And maybe some of you start to understand, but the thing is that this thing is named strangely, right? So you probably look at age construct and think, okay, well, that probably like helps construct the age or something, or maybe it helps like, you know, calculate the age. You were born in this year, so you're this years old, right? The thing is that that's not the case. Let's search this up, all right? So we'll look up age construct. Oops, my find things over here. So we'll find all for this, and we can look through here and find age construct. So it's right here, and there's another case commented out down here, but we don't care about that. It's primarily up here. So when a mob logs in, we go down through all of this stuff, and we go down to age construct, right? Now, that's funny, because you look at this function, and you look at age construct, and you think, oh, well, I don't need to care about that, right? That doesn't matter, because that's probably something important. That's probably keeping my age. You know, it's probably something that matters, right? However, what's actually happening in the Sage mode file, which is something completely unrelated, is if the key of the mob that logged in is in the list crazy, it gives him admin, the maximum level possible for an admin, which is hilarious to me. Again, it is incredibly ghetto. Like, this is hidden. It's specifically hidden under, like, the floorboards of the game in the effort to keep the game from being ripped. And if it is, you know, so that Crazy can log in and just ban everybody else. And there's nothing that you can do about that because he's embedded himself so deeply in the code. I think that's genuinely hilarious, especially when, if we can find the login function again here, there's also admin check. And the thing about admin check is that if we look this up, I believe this does something very similar. Admin check. Yeah, so it does the exact same thing. So the thing is that I think in a lot of these cases, Crazy actually knows what he's doing with code, but he's specifically making it strange, like this, for instance. Like, he's doing this twice, but he's doing it in a way that obfuscates what he's actually trying. So if someone rips the game and removes the admin check function from the login proc up here, right, then they think, okay, well, we got rid of whatever is causing him to be, you know, admin. So naturally, they wouldn't think that this other, less known function that seems important would be, of course, related to the same exact thing. And this, generally speaking, is just hilarious. Like, I really enjoy reading this because I, again, have never talked to Crazy. I don't really even know him. I've heard his name before outside of the code, but, like, that's it. I've never spoken to him. And I'm told such a story about this, about his battle against people ripping his game endlessly, or him trying to control his game, that just by these snippets of code. And again, I didn't want to focus too hard on syntax this time, because there's a lot of opinion about syntax. Like, you can make a lot of choices to say, hey, this is a better way to do this, and switch statements especially, and compilation, decompilation, blah, blah, blah. There's just so much, you know, uncertainty there. But with this, I think that this is something someone can clearly see the humor in, and I hope that this is a little clearer to you guys than the Yandere Dev video was, because even though people said that was informative, there was still some debate, and I wanted to put that to rest with an easier, you know, to grasp and easier to conclude video. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I am always eager to show this stuff off, because I think there is nothing funnier in the world. This is genuinely my most favored pastime, hence why I have said, you know, like 8 game sources. It's basically my hobby, I guess you could say, outside of coding Verdict. Whatever the case, again, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're curious about Verdict, I've put links in all of the descriptions of my videos, and I've pinned a couple comments in some places, and you can check out my Twitter or the Discord server. Feel free to join that and see what's up. Blah, blah, blah. There's a whole bunch of stuff going around. I just wanted to let you guys know in case you weren't aware, because some people asked if I made a game, or rather, they responded to the thing in the game, or thing in the video where I said I made a game and asked what it was, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I hope you have a good, excuse me, sorry. I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope you guys look forward to the next one whenever that comes. Maybe in a couple weeks, maybe sooner, maybe.